the truth is we are professional farmers and yet at the very same time feel pretty amateur in what we're doing when it comes to those sorts of things, you know?
Yeah, it's just time and experience, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was only like last year that you saw your first sheep. So, I mean, you've come a long way already.
This is the Farm Hop Life Podcast, a traveling homestead family. I'm Matt DeRozier. On the Farm Hop Life Podcast, we learn what it takes to grow your own food from everyday people. Could be a college student, grows tomatoes and salad greens on their apartment patio, a former VP of marketing for Del Taco now raising cattle in Montana, or someone who hasn't had a homestead in over 10 years. This show is aimed at teaching you what it takes to make homesteading work for you, that we all make mistakes, we all have bad days, but we can reach out and help one another thrive, and giving you the confidence needed to go feed yourself.
You have an off-farm job, I'm assuming.
No, actually, I'm full-time on farm.
Really?
Yes.
How long has that been? How long have you been able to do that?
Coming up on 2 years full-time. And then prior to that, maybe a year and a half where I was kind of bouncing between an off-farm job and on-farm work.
Wow, dude, good for you.
Thanks, man.
I did not know that. So like, I just assumed like, like most people on Twitter, X, whatever, that like they just dabble in it, right?
Right. Well, I don't actually know, to be honest. Like, sometimes I'm looking at like all of my farm mutuals and I'm like, dang, these guys are like getting after it. I don't know how they have, like, they're accomplishing a lot. So sometimes they'll post something like, yeah, man, had to do the off-farm job today. I'm like, what? These guys getting so much done.
Don't be deceived, right? Maybe they just post a bunch of stuff all in the same week or something.
Yes, the trap of farm envy, where you're like, man, my mutual is awesome. I wish I was like them.
But it also is like inspiring too, because like I want to share what I did, and so you're like, I'm gonna go do
or
this
I'll
thing.
be like, dang, that's a really good idea. I'm gonna do that too. You know?
Yeah. So it's not usually a negative, but dude, that's cool. So first, how did you get into farming, and then how did you transition from hobbyist to full time?
Yeah, so I have kind of a really weird getting to farming journey. So like I lived, I grew up in Southern California, and at least in the area I'm at, there weren't a lot of farms. I'm from Redondo Beach, which is beach community, moved inland to Hawthorne. So no real farms, but I ended up going to Utah and lived there for 11 years. And while I was there, I took like a summer job doing some farming at some cool historic orchards outside of Brigham City. And I honestly hated it, every minute of it. And was like, okay, well, like farming's like, I'll never do that. Like we're all good. I don't want to touch that. But Utah kind of changed my world, as far as I grew up in a really bustling, megalopolis style world. And then Utah was a lot slower pace of life and more exposure to rural life. And I did like that a lot quieter, a lot more meaningful. And then I moved to Louisiana, and I had kind of done like little garden plots wherever I lived, just Miracle-Gro sprayed on like, I don't know, green onions, something ridiculous. But when I moved to Louisiana, I had been telling my wife for years, like, hey, I just want to put together some garden beds in the backyard. Hey, I want to put some garden beds together. And she's always like, oh no, it's gonna be horrible. I mean, it's so hot down here. I mean, I don't know where you're at, but it is. We say down here, it'll teach you a lesson in humidity, and it will. So I convinced her. I put together some backyard garden boxes, and we started planting back there. And it was, I don't know, maybe 4 boxes, but it became kind of a haven for us. And over time, like our love of being out there planting things, working in soil, caused us to start looking around at this tiny little subdivision lot and thinking like, how do we convert every last piece of this into production? So like we violated our HOA and city ordinances, and we put together like a flight pen for quail, because we're like, oh, we can get eggs and meat. That's genius. So we did quail, and then we started doing some perennial plantings. We started doing we vined in muscadine. We were growing like Natchez thornless blackberries. And at some point we're starting to farm dream and thinking like, dude, it would be cool. Like the homestead movement, all this good stuff. Like our hearts are kind of yearning for a return to a much more agrarian way of life. Anyway, I was a full-time pastor and philosophy teacher in New Orleans. My wife's a stay-at-home mom. So the pandemic hit, and we're kind of watching everything shut down, and we're thinking like, man, this is like, if there was ever a time to just get on a farm and start, now's the time. So we bought land in Mississippi, right over the border from where we were at, just better quality land for farming,
Sure.
a lot cheaper than where we were at in Louisiana. And we just moved up here, man. And we're like, let's do this. And we started farming. So
That's
kind of
awesome.
like, it's a roundabout journey, but that's how we got here.
Yeah, it usually isn't linear, right? It's usually just kind of bobs and weaves.
Yeah, you
That's
go
awesome.
from like, I'll never farm. That's like, who would do that, to I'm a full-time farmer and I can't even imagine not doing this.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, man, this is a lot of like, your parents make you help in the garden. Like, this sucks. This is so much work. Why would anyone want to do this?
Right. Or in my context, it was growing up like, food doesn't come from gardens. It comes from Albertsons. You're an adult and you're like, food does come from gardens.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So for all of that, what is the motivation behind it?
Yeah, that's so, and I thought about this question a lot. I think it's a couple things. I think the first motivation is just, I think we were created to do this. You feel it internally. And I think you've seen the studies, where interaction with soil has an endorphin release on the human brain. Interaction with livestock is exceedingly good for us as human beings. And I think I think growing up in a very, just city life, I think you're so disconnected from that when I first moved to Utah, it was the first time I saw sheep. I remember driving like down a freeway, and Utah has cities separated by large swaths of open land, which was totally new to me as a guy from Southern California. And I saw sheep and I was like, what? I've never even seen a sheep outside of television. Like, this is so cool. And you start interacting with it and you realize like, we're made for this. We're supposed to be doing this. And forever from that point forward, there's a part of me that just felt incomplete. Like, we're not supposed to be sitting in cubicles and spending all of our time in the office. Whatever we have to do to make a living, whatever, that's fine. But that's not what we're meant to be. We're meant to be engaging with the land. So that's motivation number one, is just, this is what I was made for. But motivation number two is like, I have a family, I have 4 children, and my wife, and I want to do something meaningful and develop some kind of meaningful legacy for my kids, and good food and good work that's worth doing. And like I said, that connection to what we were made for has been critical for me and pushed me more and more and more towards that. And the pandemic just provided, I think for a lot of people too, I'm certainly not alone in that, but it provided a really simple segue into, you know what, everything that I've been doing is not meaningful. Let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel it too whenever I go outside, just even if it's just kind of like BS work, I don't really have like a goal in mind. I just needed to be outside. Every once in a while, my wife would be like, it comes around every, like 6 months. Like, hey, we should like rent our house and like, just rent in the city. And I just can't do it. I don't know how. I don't know if you know how good just being able to walk outside and just almost do nothing if you wanted to, like how good that is for me and the kids. And you.
It's necessary, because we live in a world where if you're not always doing something, if you're not always busy, produce, go, then somehow like we have crazy amounts of FOMO. We have that fear of missing out, like we're missing something in our life. And actually, man, we're not hydrated enough, we're not rested enough, and we don't just do nothing enough to even reflect on how good life is.
Yeah. I usually am very like go because like I just like have like all this energy and like I need to get something done, and just, if I'm too idle too long, I go crazy and annoying.
Same.
But every once in a while, I will just like I'm gonna go outside. My wife will be like, "What are you gonna do?" I'm like, "I don't know." So I just go out there and I'll either find something to do, or I'll just take a walk around the property, be like, "Huh, that's new. Huh, that's new," and just. So sometimes you need that.
Yeah, I think it's good, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm in Western Montana, by the way.
Oh, so cool, man.
Much different. So south of Missoula.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I have family in Billings,
Yep.
and then in Cody, Wyoming. Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah, so a lot different than Louisiana and Mississippi. It's
Just a little. Just
it's dry, uh, and not a lot of precipitation, but
how long is your growing season there?
about 120 days on a good year.
Okay. That's decent. That's good.
Yeah,
I wasn't
and like
sure.
if you look at like the grand solar minimum maximum, it can go from like 90 to 120 somewhere in there. But yeah, we got really good sun here, and
Yeah,
so and our property is southwest facing, and so we get all that glorious sunlight.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's really awesome. And Montana's beautiful. I mean,
it is.
absolutely beautiful. Cold in the winter.
You
Beautiful.
can be. It's beautiful in the winter though.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It is
beautiful all
nice.
year round. I've been to Louisiana 3 times in the last 3 months for work, and
Yeah.
there's some parts that are nice.
Yes. It took us, I mean, we're not native Southerners. My wife is from Utah and I'm from Los Angeles area. So we're not native Southerners, but it's grown on us, you know.
Yeah,
We've fallen in love with the South, and I never thought we would. And it's a
sure.
great place for growing. We have a really long growing season and mild winters. The summers took about 10 years to get used to, though. Those were brutal.
Yeah, the humidity is pretty brutal down there.
Yes.
I like it I've said this a million times, but I like it in the north because I'm such a baby in the heat. I just get grumpy and just I just like when I get hot and my ears get hot, they turn like bright red, and just like that's it. Like I might as well just go inside because I'm just gonna be too mad to I don't know, whatever.
No,
I can't cool down. I can't cool down that well or something. I don't know, but
I get it, man.
each
Like
their own.
when we're out in the field working and then we're done with the day, like in July or August, man, it takes hours and hours and hours for that field heat to come off our bodies, you know? Well, we're just like steaming. It's gross. You come in, you get into a cold shower as soon as you can, you stay underneath some kind of fan, and you just like, okay, it's all right. We're not going to die. And eventually fall will come, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That's how we live.
So your current property, so you went from Louisiana to Mississippi. So how
Yes.
long have you been in your current property?
Just I think, let's see, 4 years in July.
Nice. So you've had quite a lot of time to kind of observe how the land works and kind of make some adjustments. And so what kind of like practices or techniques and like methods have you tried? Or are
Yeah.
you
So,
using?
I mean, we got here. So, I mean, from a like in terms of like a vegetable growth, or we do culinary herbs more than vegetables. We do seasonal vegetables, but we do a lot of culinary herbs. Our biggest practice there is no-till, which I'm sure a lot of folks know about, but the place that we're at is about 60% hard pan clay, about a
Mm,
1/4 inch down. So there's like a 1/4 inch topsoil, and then you hit clay. And when I tell you that like it's clay, like the first time I put a shovel in the ground and I went to try to take a little piece out, I could only get in so far, and it snapped the handle of my shovel. So I was pretty
dang.
surprised. So like I started researching no-till because I recognized I already knew a little bit about it, but not enough to be like, oh, I can do this. I know what I'm doing. And we ended up using a really simplistic system to try to convert space for growing. We did silage tarp occultation for, I think we did like 4 months, like dead heat of summer, so that it killed everything beneath it, to try and put that organic matter into the soil, opening things up, get pores for air and water. Then we opened that up, did the initial tillage that you would do with tractor and harrow plow. We got it all disked. And then we laid in beds with this compost that this woman sold us for an extremely high price, but it wasn't compost. And we learned that later, but those are the lessons you learn farming.
So what was it then? Just
It was a real
fill?
piney humus. So it was like super acidic, and we already struggle with acidic soils here.
Hmm.
So it just like I actually have a large portion of the pile. I'll send you a photo, man. I have a large portion of the pile left over not one thing will grow in it. And I'm telling you that when I tell you, like, the weeds here grow in everything, like wisteria climbs up dead trees here. I mean, everything's alive. You've been here. Like, there's
Oh
nothing,
yeah.
there's like, I have a hill of dirt, nothing will grow on, not one weed. So
Odd.
yeah, I know. I was like, man, this is like the anti-life field on this soil. But we laid that in, and then we actually we tried to mix that in with the native clay. We got some germination of weeds, and it took us about 2 years to develop the garden, because I had to let weeds grow in each of my beds and then chop them at the base to leave their roots in there, and just more organic matter, until finally we started seeing some transformation of the way things looked, and we were starting to get some leverage in there. And then we went to broad forking, and laying in wood chip pathways, pretty standard practice. And that really started supercharging our ability to grow. And now, I mean, like, you wouldn't recognize it. It's a dark black soil. I can reach my hands down 9 inches. Everything germinates and grows in it really well. But it's like, so soil reparation is a really big deal in the South. And that's, if you know anything about the history of soils in the South, that George Washington Carver, his peanut planting thought process was, we've got to figure out how to fix our Southern soils. They're depleted by the things we're growing, whether tobacco or cotton, and we're not getting the nutrients back in. So no-till made good sense for us, and trying to figure out how to do some of the regenerative work that's there. Right now we're trying to figure out, I say figure out because it's a learning curve, but we're trying to figure out pasture management. We do sheep. So we're doing a lot of rotational grazing and mob stocking, and trying to fine tune our numbers and our days, and try to bring back some areas that maybe in the past were pasture. I probably should have said this up front. The property that we're on is an old horse farm. Like, a long time ago, it was a horse farm. And then it changed hands to just a family that wasn't doing any farming whatsoever. And they just kind of let the whole place go to pot. And then we came in, and we're newbies to the whole thing, and we started from scratch in that regard. And so it's a lot of trying to reset the environment through as many regenerative practices as we can get our hands on. And so that's, I mean, from a practices point of view, I hope that's answering the question the way that you're looking for.
Yeah, it is. So the nice thing about this, like, yes, you might have bought some expensive material that was not helpful, but the benefit to you being in the South is that you can build topsoil very quickly in the South.
Yeah.
Where I'm at, it takes years to do that same thing. It takes a long time.
I can't imagine, because you guys have a totally different system up there.
Yeah. It's so dry. Like it.
Yes.
I mean, obviously there are drier places, but if you were to leave, like if you were to fell a dead tree and just let it sit there, you could come back in 20 years and it'd still be there. Whereas like in the South, there'd be tons of stuff growing all over it. You'd kind of be like, man, the ground's kind of spongy in this one spot. Oh, it's standing on an old tree.
Yeah. Like, you guys would have petrification, whereas we have like the most ultimate deterioration down here because of the humidity and like every soil-borne organism and every bug. And yes.
Yeah. Everything's fighting for, to get there's a lot going on to just, things take over very quickly. Whereas like you kind of have to really push things along where I'm at to get them to grow. But
yeah, that would be hard. That's a totally different environment.
Yeah. But, there's some good things too about it, where it's like things don't grow as, like not as like invasive, I guess. And so the one thing that I do fight a lot is cheatgrass, but there's ways to mitigate that.
So I feel very uneducated here. I don't even know what cheatgrass is. I'm going to look that up.
It's like, it looks like you should be able, like cows or whatever should be able to eat it, and they can, but when it's like just sprouting, like the first 4 to 6 inches, and then after that, cows and I think sheep and goats will eat it.
Okay.
But after it starts to develop a little bit more, the seed heads get so sharp that like they don't want to eat it because it just like pokes them in the mouth, and then these seeds will like get stuck in everything. I mean, like I'll get it stuck in like somehow they'll like fall off and make their way into my boots and get stuck in my socks. And I've had to sit with tweezers and pull them out of my socks if I ever wanted to keep that sock.
Oh no.
It's really bad. And so
they're like a real small seed and they're just like super sharp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much. And so there was one time like, oh, I know what to do. I'm just gonna burn these. Well, the grass part is so thin that it just burns the grass and the seed head just drops. And so I basically just planted thousands of these cheatgrass seeds. So I went and I took a 1/4 acre of my property and went and seeded it with like some dry land pasture with legume. So hopefully that will develop and I can in the future have sheep on that.
Yeah, that's that's a funny thing that you say, just because like when we have several different flushes of weeds in the spring and summer season. And it's been interesting. That's part of that land observation you're talking about. The first year we were here, we really just spent a lot of time like watching and saying like, what happens this time of year? What happens this time of year? So like from like the weed flush point of view, I didn't know anything about weed management or cultivation or nothing when I got here. I just thought like, oh yeah, it's weed whack them, which I had no idea. Like once they've set seed and how quickly they set seed, you're just spreading seed everywhere, So like it took me a long time to figure out like just the life cycle of our weeds here. Things like Carolina geranium or chamber bitters, prostrate spurge, a bunch of this stuff that kind of grows here, and try to figure out its life cycle. And then I ended up calling was a learning experience. I called the state extension and I was like, hey, like, I just need to find like, who's our weed guy for the state. And so I finally got him on the phone. He's in another portion of the state. And I said, look, I'm just looking for information, data on weed flushes, best time to terminate weed crop as it's coming up in order to, prevent the reset and the resowing of seeds. And he's like, well, young man, I'll be honest, that's a very interesting question, but there's just not enough money in this state for us to even know any of that. So best I can do is I can send you some PDFs of some books written in 1903 by people who were here in the time, and they've got some great observational data, and that's it. So I'm just poring over old books, being like, well, I sure hope they knew what they were doing.
Oh gosh. So yeah. Like what kind of suggestions have you found so far?
They were just... It's early 1900. They were just burning everything. Everything was fire, which sure. We both know led to the Dust Bowl. So you're like, I don't think I can do it exactly like that. I can certainly use like pre-emergent flame weeding situation or stale seed bed preparation and those kinds of things. But we've just figured out, okay, at this stage, when the weed looks like this, it hasn't set any of its seeds yet. I can do whatever I want with that thing. I can come in with a wire hoe, and that's, to be honest, most of our cultivation is wire hoe. Using the stuff from Neversink Farms, because the interchangeable head is awesome and allows me to get what I need to get and just kind of rip it out a little bit. It comes up and it's dead. It's going to lay there and be baked by the sun. But I think that in reading and in talking with other farmers in my area, I'm fairly certain that the idea, like when Connor from Neversink is like, you can have a weed-free farm. Not here, you cannot, sir. That's an impossibility. It's not true. Not in the South. Maybe where you live, though.
You just got to put in more work.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm hearing you're just lazy.
If I would just put in more labor hours, things would be as pristine as the Kentucky Derby course, sir.
So you got what breed of sheep do you have?
Say again, breed of sheep, Gulf Coast natives.
Okay.
So they're, and do you know about that breed pretty much, or?
I wonder if I heard about that from Homestead Padre.
Definitely. Yeah, he definitely knows about them. They're a breed of sheep, and they're probably a mixed breed from years ago in Spain. The Spanish dropped them here 500 years ago when they were coming along the southern coastline of America, and they were basically just kind of seeding a population for future use. And they were dropping them in Florida, in Alabama, in Mississippi, in Louisiana, I think in Texas as well. And then when they came back in for permanent settlement, they started rounding up whichever sheep had survived and decided these are the ones that are, going to be the most hardy for the area. And then over the years, that has become the Gulf Coast native sheep breed. And so they're incredibly, they have really strong hoof rot resistance. They got pretty strong parasite resistance. They tolerate our heat pretty well. They tolerate the range and the food really well. In fact, if my sheep, if I have like pristine, amazing Bermuda available to them, or I have a field with nothing but native weeds, they will look at the Bermuda like it means nothing to them and go straight for the native weeds. And that's what they love. So good sheep.
Nice.
Yeah.
How many do you have?
We have 15 right now. What our goal is over the next couple of years here is through just breeding. We want to be at about 120 sheep.
Wow.
Yeah. I told you, man, the first time I ever saw them, I was like, I'm going to have sheep one day.
Are you planning on just building your own flock, or are you going to do a mix of like, breeding your own and then also buying some, over the course of the years to kind of get there a little faster?
Yeah, I think our plan is to breed them out ourselves. They have a very, very high viability rate. Like they're rarely going to lose. They lamb in the field. Like I've watched some great shepherds to try and learn more about sheep in general. A lot of time they're having to help their sheep, to lamb and to be successful and keep the babies alive. That's with this particular breed. They breed in the field, and they lamb in the field, and you just wake up in the morning. There's lambs. They're fine. They do great. So, but we will have to bring in rams from outside of the flock over time. Every 2 to 4 years, I think, is the standard wisdom on that, to just prevent line breeding that's going to create problems down the line.
Right.
So, we've got a great stud ram here. He's phenomenal. There's 4 lines of Gulf Coast native. There are 4 different families that were raising them. And so, not that it matters. We have a Ladner. Our primary sheep are Ladner line. The ram is Perkins. He brings in a lot of size, a lot of body conformation. So we're working at it. But the truth is, we are professional farmers, and yet at the very same time feel pretty amateur in what we're doing when it comes to those sorts of things.
Yeah, it's just time and experience, right?
Yeah.
So it was only like last year that you saw your first sheep. So, you've come a long way already.
Yeah. Like last 21 years ago ish. Yes.
All right. Sorry. I was rounding down.
It feels like a year ago.
Rounding up.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like good and bad with sheep, right? So what are some things with sheep that haven't worked? Like, man, those are some dumb sheep.
So sheep are prey animals. When we first got them, and my wife is an amazing person who has been willing to be like, sure. Yeah. When I first told her like, hey, I'm gonna go get some sheep, she was like, I don't know if I even like sheep. Now she loves them, but she didn't at the time. So, but we get these sheep here, and I bought this, Premier One, electric fence netting, and I watched it on YouTube. So of course it's going to work. And got it, set up in like the front area. And I was like, man, they can probably clean up the grass here, and then I'll just move them down to the barn in the night without like thinking even one time, like, you've never moved a sheep, sir. So I loaded up, and Padre Homestead will tell you, the back of my van has moved a lot of sheep. I've got just a typical passenger van. I lay down the chairs in the back and lay down a bunch of tarps in there, and there's sheep. So I went and picked them up from a guy his family's been raising sheep since 1813 in the area. So he's got he's telling me they're the easiest animal you'll ever deal with, blah, blah, blah. So we get him in the back of the van, he helps me wrangle him in. And I come to the property, and I'm all excited, and I get him into the electric fencing, and now I'm feeling like a hero. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. So at night, my wife and I are supposed to go out on a date for her birthday. And, we better put these sheep in the barn, except the barn's like on the other side of the property, a couple of acres away. I'm like, he said we could just like bucket train them, and, they'll come to corn, so pour it in. These sheep are having nothing to do with it. My wife's like, well, just turn off the fence and I'll get in there with them. She jumps in, and one of the sheep just decided she wouldn't have any of it and flew at the fence, hit it, did like a flip, landed on its feet, and just kept going. So we chased, and that chase lasted 2.5 hours through the woods, brambles, briars, everything. And every time we had her cornered, she's like juke moving. I'm 42. So like I landed on my shoulder. I was like, oh no, I'll feel it in the morning, but get back up and keep going. We did discover we could run for 2 hours. So that was good. But
it's almost a marathon.
At the end of it, she found her way into like a hunting club's land. And we were like, well, looks like she's dinner for something. So the hardest thing about sheep was realizing that as prey animals, you never chase them and you have to develop a rapport. They're faster than you, they're jukier than you. There's nothing you can think of that's going to catch them unless you've got them in an enclosure,
Right.
and you have to develop trust with them. So that I think that was like the hardest thing for us because again, we're amateurs in that regard. Um, and that was really hard. Once we figured out that they could learn to trust you through a combination of your gentle actions, time spent with them, your voice and smell, they learn some routines and they go, oh, we trust these guys. They're the guys who bring us food. Why would we not trust them?
Yeah.
Then it's been a lot easier. But the initial shock of, oh no, was that was the hardest thing. And that played itself out a few times. That was like the first time. Several times that we had sheep get out and we're like, oh no, we got to chase them. And we're trying to like figure out how to create these amazing acre-sized triangles of people to try and keep this animal in. It's just that doesn't work.
Yeah, those types of sheep are very skittish, but
Yeah.
that's also what helps them keep them alive too. Because
Yes.
you have you got a livestock guardian dog from Padre, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah. Ruby.
Nice. That's what's the breed? It's
Great Pyrenees.
yeah, that one.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, she's a phenomenal dog. By the way, he had told us she's like 5th generation livestock guardian dog and good genetics and everything. He wasn't lying. She's a phenomenal animal. Her temperament is incredible. She's a good dog.
Are you gonna have her bred and you can sell livestock guardian dogs? You're like, I don't want anything to do with puppies.
Probably not. And the only reason is we'll probably have to spay her. She's going to live full time in the fields with the sheep as soon as, probably maybe May. And there's a lot of where we live, we're out in the country, and a lot of folks they've got dogs and they let them roam. And my biggest concern would be that there's going to be breeding happening in the fields and she's going to be pupping a lot and it's from random stray dogs. And you're like, that's really not good for her. In terms of, that's not really her job out there. And on top of that, it wouldn't allow us to control for, hey, let's go ahead and bring in a Great Pyrenees. Let's make sure this is a great deal. Let's make sure these are good genetics. Let's make sure these are going to be great dogs. So we probably will keep her for her lifespan and not breed her. Although, I mean, I think Padre is continuing to breed over time. And as long as he's doing livestock guardian dogs, I'd rather buy mine from him. He's awesome.
Yeah.
And
I thought he was getting out of it, but
he said he was getting out of it, and then his dog had like 9. So then
he was just giving them away. He tried to. I went to go visit him, and there's these 2 little. I don't know how old they were. They're still puppies. He's like, "Do you want to bring these back with you?" I'm like, "I think I'm gonna have a hard time getting these 2 dogs on a plane."
Yeah. Yeah, he's such that was one of those times where my wife's like, wait a minute, where are you going? I'm like, yeah, one of my Twitter mutuals, man. Like, we're friends and like we talk all the time about farming. And he asked me if I need a livestock guardian dog, and we just talked about that. And she's like, yeah, but like, do you know him? I'm like, yeah, I mean, like on X, like we talk, I mean, he'd be a sociopath, but who cares? Like,
yeah,
but he's actually just a great dude. And so
I work with sociopaths, so it's like, is it really any different?
Yeah, I mean, geez, the world's a crazy place. You got to take risks. But yeah, I ended up meeting him, and she's such a nice guy. And I've told him, I was like, what a great, like, we talk about these relationships that get developed just through liking each other's posts or making comments or sharing your farm material. And somebody's like, oh, that's really cool. Let me show you this. And like, it's neat when it turns into these real life connections. Like, it's really cool, Very. And I think certainly for what we're doing, which is this kind of agricultural / homesteading / small steading / farmsteading, land holding, whatever it is that we're doing, whatever moniker we're giving to it or appellation we choose, community is a big part of it. And it's really cool when that digital community comes out of the digital world into reality.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like there's a time and a place for online community. There should be a strong focus in local community, but there also is like, there's kind of almost like wonder or like mysticism. Like, how do people across the country homestead, and like what kind of things are they experiencing? Because obviously you guys have 10,000 more insects than we do. Like, and so like we actually had a very wet spring last year.
Uh-huh.
And we had like, I had tarps here and there, and so like there's all these places for mosquitoes to breed and whatever. And there was like we actually had like some mosquitoes last year, and I was like, I forgot how much I hate these things because I'm originally from Minnesota, and so like there's mosquitoes everywhere over there, and just man, I've been spoiled not having to get bit by mosquitoes all the time, every night throughout the entire summer. Like this is I have to figure out what to do with my water better so I can not have these puddles of mosquitoes everywhere.
Yeah, it is a mystery because everybody on all the people throughout this country is huge and has a huge diversity of climate. And so what's a problem for me is not a problem for another guy, and what's a solution for another guy sometimes ends up being a solution for me. So it's pretty cool,
Yeah. Like, hey, this works in the South, like it might work here, or like with like a little fine tuning.
Yeah.
You can work here too.
Yeah, that's right.
Or yeah. So what's been the biggest challenge in farming you faced so far?
Lack of mentorship, 100%.
Yeah, that'd be a problem.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a first generation farmer. I mean, like my farm background in the summertime in Utah, farm background's like a joke. Like I worked on some farms doing very minimal stuff, was in fruit orchards that, exist out there, stone fruits, cherries, peaches, nectarines, apricots. And I was just helping to pick, I wasn't doing much. When I decided I wanted to farm down here, there are very few people to talk to about it. I mean, there are definitely, Mississippi is an agrarian state at a macro agricultural level. So if I was going to go buy 12,000 acres and the coolest combine you could possibly think of and get out there and plant corn, or some major cash crop for our area, then yeah, I probably could find some farm mentors. And we would do things in the monoculture way. And I would learn just traditional American agriculture post 1950s. That's what I would learn. But to do sort of small steading, or this sort of small scale farming, where you're looking for diversity and sort of a regenerative approach to things, and frankly, where you dream of like how cool it would be to live somewhat like the Amish in terms of their garden practices and their animal practices, even if not in like I like certain amenities. There's not a big mentorship pool in the area, and so everything feels like trial by error. Really, it's just you're learning by failing. You're like, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. Oh, that didn't work. I'll give you just even a simple example: planting pumpkins. People were like, "Oh man, you gotta do fall pumpkins, bro. Like that's like the thing." And I'm like, "Okay, fall pumpkins. Like, all right, our fall planting dates. We want to make sure things are in ground September 1. No problem. All right, so I've got my transplants ready. Put my pumpkins in ground. October, they're dead. What happened here?" So then I'm like, man, I'm going to talk to a couple of guys like, man, I don't know. I've always found it's better if you do it 1 month earlier. And I was like, August 1st. Okay, no problem. August 1st, 1 month earlier. I don't know why 1 month earlier. And it's super hot. And that doesn't make sense to me either. But okay. Planted them August 1st, got pumpkins. At the farmer's market with another farmer, we're chatting about it. He's like, I've been doing pumpkins for 40 years. I'm going to tell you right now. The secret is doing them July 1st. I said, dude, you sell so many pumpkins, so you definitely know what you're talking about. And he does. It's like, it took 3 seasons of summer before I finally knew July 1st is when I plant pumpkins. And that's 3 years. You think about, I heard this on a podcast once. It's like, even if you've been planting tomatoes for 40 years, you've only done it like 40 times. Like
that's true.
Unless you're doing multiple seasons or you're growing under a hoop house, it's not like you've got like this extensive. So it took 3 years to figure out like, how do I get successful pumpkins? That's a long time to not be able to succeed at something. And that's, I think, that's been the hardest thing. So everything from how do I transform this ground to how do I manage these pastures well and get them where I want them to go, and how using the tools that I have or not using tools that I wish I had, how do I accomplish goal X? And it's a lot of just like, I don't know. We're gonna fail so hard that we'll know for sure that doesn't work, or there's a chance it'll work if we tweaked it, like you said.
Yeah, where you can, it's like the 90-10 rule, or 80-20, where you can get it 90% of the way, and it's the last 10% that's the hardest, but it's going to make it the most successful. So like it'll take you from like just good to great. So
yeah,
you really got
good
to.
Francis Collins reference there.
I don't even know who that is.
Oh, he wrote the book From Good to Great.
Oh, well, maybe I should write a book.
There you go.
So what's the best part about farming?
The time that I have with my children and my wife, by far. So you know, if you say that, like, and I think you probably comprehend this, I'm sure, like, this is probably how I imagine this is how most people feel about it. So I say that recognizing I might be speaking out of my eyeballs and not yours, but I feel like you acquire a piece of land, or you acquire multiple pieces of land, or whatever you do, you start acquiring animals and you're learning these skills and you're doing these things. At some point, they're not your acquisitions. They're your responsibility. And you transition to a steward of all of these things that you have. And so, like, you bought a farm, but really you now belong to the farm and you're married to it in a way. And like the land, it has some ownership on you and you are invested in it. And I think that has bound my family together in ways that our life before was not at all. You know, you're working away from home all the time, and you have to. There's no choice. You have to be able to provide for your children and take care of your bride. And so you're out there working and you're doing what you got to do. But the drawback there is that, like, you are paying for a home you never spend time in, for yards that you diligently maintain every year, but you don't play in them. You don't have the time for it because the weekends are packed with all sorts of other activities. And you just feel like I would come home, my wife would be like, "Oh yeah, the kids did this," and you're looking at pictures of what they're doing without you there, and that was a huge bummer for me. And then farming, you're tied to the place, and so you're tied to it together, and there's a togetherness all the time that has been really amazing. And I feel like I get to see things that I wouldn't normally get to see. And in fact, I get to see the fruit of my labor in two ways. Like, we cultivated muscadine vines around our huge culinary herb garden, trellised along the fence line, because we were like, that'd be cool. We should do that, you know? So those grew, and it's been pretty awesome. But like, my dream was like, wouldn't it be so great, like, to just be able to have your kids, like, you're out working in the garden, they run out, "Hey dad," they're going to get muscadines, enjoy those as they're going off to do something else. You're like, man, this is why I'm here. And I got to see that this last year. I was out there and I was cutting basil for a grocery store, and getting ready to deliver. And there are my two youngest. They're underneath the overhanging vines of the muscadine in the garden, and they're just sitting there eating muscadines and giggling. And like, as a father, that's the best part of this entire experience, is the connectedness that I get to have with them.
That would be just frame a moment for your entire life, and just like, if you could just like take it out and look at it anytime you wanted, that would be it for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Like, right now, my kids are at an age, they're almost 4 and almost 2, and they were sitting on the couch reading books, not together, but they were sitting next to each other reading their own books. My wife's like, look at them. They're not beating each other up, or like they're not fighting. It's just like, you know, screaming, yelling, whatever. But yeah, those little moments like that.
Yes.
That stand out. Like, all right, that was all worth it.
Yeah. They're beautiful moments, and they happen really fast. And I mean, our oldest is 14, our youngest is 6. And like, it's, you know, you get told, and we've been told by parents, like, oh, it's going to go by fast. And it's true. You're watching it happen so quickly. And I think this has allowed us to slow down enough that I don't feel personally like I'm missing it anymore. You know, I feel like I get to be around for it. And that's the point, you know.
Right.
I used to tell my wife, you know, like, I married you because I love you, and I wanted to spend every moment of my life with you. And then I had children with you because I wanted to build a beautiful family and a beautiful life with you. Like, best friend in the world, like the person that I enjoy the very most in any moment of my life. But now that I have this marriage and this family, in order to maintain it, I have to spend so much time away from it. I wish there was a way I could spend more time with it. And I think farming has done that for us. So
that's where I'm at now. And that's where I'm trying to get to, whether that means farming or something around farming. I don't care. I'm away a lot.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, I'm away right now.
Really? I did not know that.
I'm in Utah right now.
What?
Yeah.
Where?
A little town called Milford.
I know Milford. Yeah.
Why?
Because I've driven all throughout that state, man. Every place I've been, man, I have driven through Utah. I lived there for 11 years. I spent a lot of time all over little tiny places that like Payson or boy, there's so many. Yeah, we could talk Utah for a long time.
I bet we could. I haven't done a lot here. Where I was just before this interview, we went 15 minutes down the road to Frisco, the old abandoned mine, Frisco.
Yeah.
And so we were hiking around there for an hour, probably 2 hours. And so came back and we got to take off early from work today. So went and did some hiking around.
It's a beautiful country. It really is beautiful country.
It can be. Where Milford is, man, it is hot, it is windy, and it stinks like pig ass. Like bad all the time.
Okay. Yeah. I can see that.
I even did a post about all the pig farms that are here. And like, there's actually a lot of controversy about the pig farms in Milford. Like how it's owned by the Chinese now and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is, we can talk about it later. There's a lot to say about that, you know? Big part of it is, hey, Americans, you may have to wake up one day and realize that your ancestors were agrarian and that many of your framers of the Constitution viewed an agrarian economy as the primary way by which you were actually going to enjoy a good and beautiful life. And if you don't want to see your food delegated out to every other person on planet Earth, you may have to take some personal responsibility for growing or raising some of it.
Yes.
And you can't be angry when you have essentially abdicated the opportunities afforded by a land that your ancestors landed on and were like, dude, we could do so much with this, when somebody else sees that they can do so much with it because you don't want to.
Right.
No.
Yeah. Like, well, if you're not going to use it, I'm going to use it.
That's exactly right. I mean, nobody's showing up to a resource-rich place like America and being like, yeah, let's just leave it untouched. We won't do anything here. We'll just observe. No, man, they're looking and they're saying, we could raise these animals and we could plant these trees and we could use that timber and we could do this long growth pine. And oh my gosh, there's so much here, you know?
Is that why you think some homesteads make it and some don't?
No, not maybe. If what you mean is they miss the opportunity provided by their land, yeah, maybe. I think my thought on that is there are three primary reasons why homesteads don't make this. And so I'll make a general observation. I'll make an observation that somebody else has made, and then I'll make a personal observation. The general observation, I think we all know, is that people get into homesteading because they're dreaming. And the doing is always harder than the dreaming. That's just what it is. In the dream, everything's perfect and everything works out. And you don't even know what you don't know. So you're not even aware of the forces that are going to begin to oppose you. So, you know, it's a beautiful thing. And human beings are apt to take credit for thinking the right thing without having done it. Having done it. I don't know. My grammar is terrible there. Having done it. And so I think the world collides into reality when the dreaming becomes the doing. It's a lot harder. And that's a conversation that's everywhere. So that's a general observation. I think Joel Salatin makes a phenomenal statement when he says that farming is business. And if you're going to, if you're going to start a farm, and I think that's, if we're going to talk about homesteaders in the classical sense of the use of this word, those who go out to land that they stake a claim on and then establish themselves a livelihood relying on no one else but their own two hands, God and nature, those people don't exist really anymore. There's very, very, very few of them. And it's not even contextually possible in America to go do that. you could be in a court battle forever on squatters' rights, or you end up being in a lot of trouble for deciding to set up a shop on Bureau of Land Management land. So that's not even really possible anymore. So we're talking about people who are saying, I want to return to my ancestral ways, and I want to do raising my own food, and I want to make my own tallow, and I want to do these kinds of, homesteady type things, I guess. But it's a business. And I think that people are coming into it thinking about all the true and the good and the beautiful things that are going to happen for their families. And they will. It's a lot of hard work. And so if they can get over that hump of it's hard work, and in order for that hard work to pay off, you have to think like a business person, and you have to be engaged in how does what I produce create an income that provides for what I'm trying to do here. And if they don't do that, I think that that's the next step of failure. Is it's like, one is, this is really hard. The next is, I don't know how to make money doing this, and so I can't, and they get locked into a forever cycle of like, I'm working off farm, and it's like, I just want to be back on the farm, but it's like, but I have to make my money out here. And then it's like, if only I could figure out how to do it there. And the first shift of mind is, well, you have to think about it like it's a business, and you have to be ruthless about it in your own head in terms of what you're willing to put your energy into and what you're not, and then my personal observation is that I think, and maybe you've experienced this, I don't know, but in my world, like our farm is primarily producing microgreens, culinary herbs, and some specialty products that are seasonally based for restaurants, grocery stores, and just direct to consumer. When we put together our price sheets and sales sheets, and we're making contact with restaurants and walking into the back, talking with chefs and dropping things off, like we had done some basic preliminary research on the market itself to understand like, what are costs? What is it costing this restaurant to purchase product A, B, C? So we kind of had our understanding, and we were looking at, okay, what would it cost us to produce this, and what do we need to make for a reasonable profit? And so once we had figured that all out, we put together our pricing structure, and people were thrilled. They're like, oh, this is a great price on this. Or, hey, that's a little bit cheaper than I'm paying for it here. And yeah, I'd prefer to do that because I don't know where this came from, but I know where this came from. And I've got you that I can hold accountable if there's a problem with it. Yeah. And so that was a really good thing. And so we were really careful to make sure, like, just because we're producing something that we think is higher quality, and just because we're producing something that we think takes more labor, and just because we're putting a lot of love into what we're doing, doesn't mean that I can go, hey, let's move to premium pricing, and then tell the consumer the only reason you're not willing to pay the premium pricing is because you don't know the real cost of food. And I think that is, from a personal observation point of view, I have people that I love and care deeply about that are farming and homesteading, and when they have their struggles, and I say, well, hey, like maybe as long as your profit margin is good, you could maybe reduce prices a little bit. That would help you, I think, to have an in some of these places. And their answer is, yeah, but I mean, what about labor? And you're like, well, brother, I don't know what to tell you, except as a farmer, you're never going to be able to factor your labor into your pricing. Otherwise, you're charging $200 for a slaughtered turkey. Good luck.
Yeah.
I mean, just
not going to how Costco does it? Loss leader. That's how they get you in the door. Like, find that product, like maybe you're not making as much as you like, or just breaking even, but gets people in the door. And then you just, just like an end cap at the grocery store. Oh, since you're here for the thing that you wanted, we also have this, this, and this.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting conundrum, because it's like educating consumers is really important, right? So whether it's the guy who's making like a tallow-based soap and he's not utilizing a lot of these dyes that are going to cause cancer, et cetera, or it's the person who is, making sure that their chicken feed has no soy, it has no corn, no GMOs, and it's just phenomenal. It's fermented, and they're giving them the apple cider vinegar in their water. And you're talking about like the top primo chicken. Like, educating the consumer about why that's good is great. Telling them why your product is good is great. Telling them why it's better than a competing product, that's business. The problem is, there's, especially now for people, I mean, with inflation where it's at, and just the price at the grocery store, there's going to come a point where they say, I want nothing more than to use your perfect goat milk soap. But at the end of the day, it's $2 for Irish Spring, and it's $12 for the amazing thing you're doing. And it's not that I don't believe every word you're saying. It's that right now I can afford $2. And then that's not to say, hey, just be bottom of the barrel and you'll succeed as a homesteader, because that's not true. I mean, that's not how any business succeeds. Like you said, that's how you get somebody in the door, maybe, is with a bottom barrel price on one thing, but then they go, oh, that's moderate, and so I'll do that. Well, that's okay. I'll do that, and they feel like they got something out of the deal. Great. But I think that homesteaders who decide, like, this is handcrafted, a lot of labor, a lot of love, a lot of work, so much better for you. All those things are true. All those things are good. All those things are beautiful. The consumer is still going to pay what the consumer is going to pay. And so you're just going to figure out, can I do this profitably or not? And if not, then you just, again, ruthlessly cut and say, that's not something we're going to do. We're going to do this. Or you pivot, like with us, with culinary herbs. And I'll give you some numbers. We looked around and said, like, what is a restaurant in our area pay per pound for basil? And the answer was $11 a pound. And so that's a good price, 16 in the off season, but we're not growing in the off season because we don't grow undercover. So we said, that's a good price, And then some grocery stores were like, hey man, we'd like some basil. And I was like, you want it by the pound? Or like, well, can you package it for us? I'm like, yeah, just a little, 0.75 ounce package. Yeah, sure. I mean, what's the normal price for that? Oh, $1.65 a unit. And I was like, $1.65 a unit, 0.75. Make almost $30 on a pound. I was like, yes, I can package it for you. I said, here, look, I'll do this. Package it for you, and I'll have it UPC'd, and it'll look great, and I'll harvest it the morning that I deliver it. And then, then we're getting like, hey, can you bring us 80? Can you bring us 100? Can you bring us 200 units a week? And you're like, okay, it doesn't cost me a lot. It costs me a lot in labor to do basil. It doesn't cost me a lot in product. I mean, I've got packaging price, and I'm seed saving, and I'm reproducing from last year's crop, and I have to pay water, and I got to do what I got to do in the soil. But you're like, you know what? I don't think it's worth it to sell culinary herbs to restaurants. I think that I've got a handful of restaurants that you've got some chefs that you love, and you're like, yeah, I would do anything for you. So yeah, I'll bring you the poundages, but I'm going to move this to grocery stores. And then you're like, now it's profitable. And I think that mentality is missing. So this is really hard. I don't see this as a business. This is a job of passion, which is great and is good. And then there's, well, I think the real price of what we're doing is here. And I think those three things lead to the failure of homesteads. That's my opinion.
There's one that you could add to it, is that they don't read either what their land can support or what their market can support. So like, if you come in somewhere and like, yeah, or just kind of buy a property, like, I'm going to have cows. I'm like, but what is the land telling you? Can it have cows, or should you do sheep, or should you do quail or whatever? And you can't. So a lot of people force fit their dream to the property instead of receiving feedback. Like, no, I actually don't think that this property could do cows. And so like, they're every step of the way, they're, fighting to make the thing work, instead of like, all right, I tried, I lost all this money trying to do cows, I guess, or they have to sell the place and, tuck tail, or, they go back to square one and actually do the thing they should have done in the first place. But like, another example, Homestead Padre, right? He's pivoted a lot to things that work for his property. So just the soil type, instead of like just fighting to be able to grow all these things, I think he's switched to just specialty crops.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a really astute observation, man. I think that's really astute. I think that it's really true. I think like, I can make an analogy in our world, which is that I love tomatoes. I've tried to grow tomatoes here. We have leaf-footed bugs. They're tomato destroyers. Nothing organic that you could possibly use is going to kill them. Like, I'm fairly certain they'll survive nuclear war. So where we're at, they're particularly bad. I just stopped trying to grow tomatoes.
Sure.
Some farmers are pulling it off, and they're in regions where they don't have the same amount of that particular pest. Some farmers are growing them in this area, and they're just spraying their crops with whatever they can spray it with. And they're having some success. But we just decided our land, our context is not tomato context. And that's okay. That's okay for us. you know? So I think that's a really astute observation you made.
What kind of goals, like long-term goals, do you have for the farm, other than, up to, I think you said 120
Sheep.
sheep?
Yeah. So, and that's because that is an enterprise that we want to engage in on selling local sheep meat to our restaurant community down in the Gulf Coast region, because right now their only access to sheep meat is coming out of New Zealand and Australia through some of the larger scale providers like Cisco
Oh,
or
wow.
through Restaurant Depot, and they're paying $24 a pound, $28 a pound, sometimes depending on what's going on in that market. And we could get them local sheep for like $16 a pound. They'd be thrilled. And so we wouldn't do a lot of it. I mean, if we slaughtered 60 a year and did breed back, or if we just worked a program and just, we don't have to do a lot, but I mean, that's $40,000-$50,000 a year in sales, nose to tail eating. That doesn't hurt as an enterprise on the farm.
Yeah.
But yeah, our goal is our long-term goal is that this is a multi-generational deal. We have two older sons, 14 and 13, both indicate that they want to farm in different ways. One of them that wants to do that professionally, one of them that says, I'll always have animals in a garden, but maybe I'll do carpentry or something like that. And then we have two younger ones who are both, they're diehard. We're going to farm. This is going to be great. We want to see a multi-generational farm born out of what we're doing. And so, sorry, I have a cat that has decided that she wants to communicate. Let me.
It was such an odd meow. Like it was like,
it is.
It almost sounded like a bird was making that sound.
She is a future barn cat who is in heat and has to be fixed. So
gotcha.
She's loud. She wants her boyfriend, but he's outside somewhere and he's never coming inside. Yeah. So we want a multi-generational farm, and that for us requires creating multiple streams of income through the farm. And so we've developed microgreens to a certain point. We want to see that expand. Microgreens could be a passing fad. I really don't know. I mean, they've been around for a fair amount of time. So if sprouts, I think people recognize the health benefits of them. It's not why restaurants use them. They use them as garnish. They're not like, oh, and by the way, when I garnish your salad with this, bull's blood beet, you get 40 times the nutrient density that you would get out of the regular beets. No. So it could be passing fad, but that's been good. We're developing the culinary herbs and we're working that. There's not a lot of culinary herb gardens in the country, which is weird. There's a lot more internationally. We're developing sheep, and we're going to add in elderberries at an orcharding level. We want to do maybe an acre of elderberry, American elderberry, for those who are using that. And then we've got some seasonal products, like I said, mockernut syrup, which is it's a hickory syrup variety, and some other things. And our goal is just to concentrate until we feel like we have we've figured it out, and we're able to do that successfully. And develop enough ventures that our children can at some point in the future look and say, well, let me peel that venture off for my own, or maybe they're going to say, we have other ideas for what could be done, and I'm not even conceiving of them right now, but it makes sense to them then, and I have to kind of let go of the reins and say, you know what, son, daughter, you are your own person, and how can I support you as you do this? But those are our long-term goals.
That's wonderful.
Thanks, man.
That sounds perfect. Like
that's what we wanted to. Yeah, everything sounds perfect when we're talking about it. It's the doing part that's really hard.
Yeah, but still, like the fact that they're already kind of expressed interest into what it is you're already doing, I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and they're young still. I mean, 14 still is young. But I think that, like, we live in a generation where the thought process is like, if you just give them wings, they'll fly. And that's true. But, we're talking about animals that have a natural recognition of where north is too. Like they know where they're supposed to go. They know where they're supposed to leave to. That's not humans. Humans don't have that innate sense of where to go and what to do. Humans are often, when they're just given their wings to fly, are cast about for the rest of their life and are always feeling like they're in a failure cycle. So our hope is that, like, we're able to guide them a little bit into that direction, because in the past, people were not suffering because they were guided into good professions. In fact, they were flourishing because they knew what they were going to be doing for the next 40 years.
Yeah, I suppose. I have wondered, like, my wife and I chose to live in Montana, but like, will our kids choose to also live in Montana, or are they going to go somewhere else? Because, like,
that's a good question.
I'm the only one in my family that left Minnesota. I guess that's not true. My sister left also, but 80% of our family still lives in Minnesota. So it's just like,
I hope. I mean, I totally get that because I'm from California, right? And I'm in the South,
Mhm.
so it's clearly I didn't stay home. My hope is, and I don't know the answer, is that like we're on 21 acres. We hope to acquire more of the acreage. There's open acreage around us. We hope to acquire more of it over time. And my hope is that just as I said about you become connected to the land because now the land has some hold on you. You have some responsibilities to it. My hope is that that's what will keep them here long term is love of place, love of community, love of the labor. Because I think that's what kept our ancestors where they were. I mean, on top of which many of them were like, what? Travel 50 miles to who knows where in the woods where there's panthers and bears? No, thank you. I'll stay right here in the village I know. But people were way more connected to place historically. We especially post World War II, we are far more traveled and don't have a sense of connectedness anywhere. We're kind of in that terminal mentality. We're always waiting for the next place we're going to, whether it's the American job scene, which is every 2 years changing jobs or changing location in order to maintain your job.
Sure.
I mean, so I hope that maybe as you like, again, it's all hope. I hope that we're able to move our children into a different way of thinking that goes back to their roots as humans, as opposed to kind of the modernist mentality of we got to go. It's time to, you want to get out there and find a new thing. Like, no, don't find a new thing. Find an old thing and stick with it. Nobody else
Yeah.
is. So,
That's
or a
true.
small handful of people are. So
That's true. So what would you tell people that want to get started?
Start. I would tell them to start. I would tell them to not let anything be a barrier to them. So if they're like, I just don't have the money for it, like, man, beg, borrow, and steal seeds. Hit one of us up on X. I'll send you seeds. That's not a problem. Plant on your balcony, plant in containers in a window, do whatever you want to do. Start with small animals if you can do it. Probably would be in trouble for this. Who cares about the HOA or the city ordinance? Put some quail in your backyard. They're quiet. They smell bad, but as long as you can put down a carbonaceous diaper for them, fill that place with wood chips, nobody's going to smell anything. They're not going to hear anything. Your neighbors going to be thrilled that you're bringing them eggs. Just start and don't let anything keep you from starting. Don't let the smallness of vision keep you from starting. Because at the end of the day, if your goal is to produce your own food and find peace of mind and do work that's worth doing, there's no reason not to do that right now.
That's well said. And there are some people that own land that just want to see it productive.
Yes.
I tried when we initially kind of set goals to go travel and go to other homesteads and that whole nine. I tried to get somebody here to, take over the property, and I had them lined up. But after meeting them the second time, my wife and I were like, no, this isn't going to work. Like for them specifically, there's a lot of red flags for them, but that part still could have worked for the right person. So like if you have like a good work ethic and you're trustworthy, man, I would, even if they weren't mine, I would still love to see sheep right now on the property.
Yeah.
It'd just be fun to see them and be like, whoever takes over, just be like, oh, hey, they come to check on them, twice a day or however long or however often they do it. Just like, oh yeah, so-and-so's out there checking on the sheep. Like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I can't get to it right now. I'm not there yet.
And I think that's where the business mindset comes in. Because if just in the hypothetical, if you're like, yeah, I've got this land and I wish that there was somebody willing to raise sheep up here. Well, if they took the time to do the research and they're like, man, I could probably acquire a herd this large for this amount. And then if I processed, I have these market channels that I could, let me go test those market channels, find out if they have a demand for it. Yes, I could sell for X price. Now they know what they could make on it. And they're like, hey man, let's chat, Matt. I mean, like, how much would you charge me to lease that land to grow some sheep up to be feeders for this particular market, And if you said, okay, here's X dollars, they can look and say, I know exactly what I'm going to have to pay to get these sheep. I know exactly what it's going to take for me to maintain them because I did some basic research. I know exactly what I'm going to do at the end. I know what I'm going to get charged here. Yeah, this is viable or not. And it's that simple, But and there are even guys that are a lot of retiring farmers, older, and you see this all the time. And Joel Salatin talks about this. And there is a gentleman on X who actually makes these connections, and I got to see if I can find his name, and I'll give it to you. But
yeah,
he connects aspiring farmers with those who have land but no children or grandchildren that want to do anything with it, to create a connection for both mentorship and the development of that property towards future use. And in some cases,
sounds like
those
something
people
Paul Wheaton does.
That might be who it is. I don't know. I can't remember his name. But I mean, in some of these cases are turning out to be like, hey, this family decided, like, when we're gone, this is you. It's your farm.
Yeah.
That's pretty rare. It's like winning the lotto, I suppose. But just the point is that there are people out there looking for those kind of connections so that something productive happens with the thing that they sweat for years, you know?
Yeah.
That's a good
I
point.
think a lot of people are afraid to put themselves out there, but like, you have to keep putting yourself out there, making those connections. That's how opportunities get made.
Yeah. Life is risk, right? Life is risk. And farming is risk because it's life, and life is risk. I mean, you mentioned earlier that like everything down here is like the bugs, everything. We used to make a joke, everything's trying to kill you. But actually what's happening is everything's trying to live, and life is risk. And so like a lot of people they're like, man, but that's, like, there's no safety in that. Like there's no safety in anything. Like every single thing that we think is safe is not as safe as we think it is. It's just the reality of it. I mean, we're always 2 steps away from catastrophic realization that this was not safe, whether that's the amazing corporate job and benefits, or the school system we're in, or any number of things. We see it every single day. So not only are they afraid to put themselves out there, like, hey, I've got this idea, and to be honest, when I look in the mirror, I think I'm not that smart of a guy, and I don't know if anybody's going to really take me serious. But the other side of that also is people have this innate, like, no, what I'm looking for is like safety and security. Well, then go create it, but it's going to take risk,
Right. Yeah, that's well said.
I feel like I'm just parroting much smarter people in the past that I've read. So,
well, you should say something like good to great, and then we can wrap up.
If we just had the right people in the right place on the bus, which is from that book.
See, there you go.
Matt, I've never gotten to meet you, and I've never even seen you. I've seen your Farm Hop Life logo and then pictures that you've put up. And I actually think I saw one picture of you with Homestead Padre, but it was really cool to meet you. And I'd hear more about your farm one day.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Caylon. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me be here.
Let people know where they can find more about you.
So yeah, we're on Instagram at 6 Day Acres Farm. We're on Facebook as well. My name, Caylon DePalma. I'm on Twitter or X or whatever we call it these days. And I post there infrequently about our farm. But the best thing you can do is hit us up in one of those channels, and we'd love to communicate. We love farming, and we love homesteading, and we love animals. We love plants. We love everything about this life.
Thank you. Yes, I will have all links for all that in the show notes. And thanks again. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much.
I am Matt DeRozier of Farm Hop Life. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and visit farmhoplife.com.
Inside of the city, the people are crazy, out of their minds, they ain't got a clue. We gone away, headed west for Montana, left family and friends, all I got now is you. We both got new jobs, a house and a homestead, thinking this was the life, all that there'd be. After our firstborn, you had to stay home. That's when the work got in the way for me. Well, I started Farm Hop Life. We'll come to your farm to help and to wander. Me and the family, a truck and an RV. Send us a message and